Hello and welcome to the I Can Do podcast with Benjamin Lee. We're here to talk about tips and strategies to have an I Can Do mindset when it comes to faith, family, fitness, and food. Let's go. Here's your host, Benjamin Lee.
Hello and welcome to another episode of I Can Do. I am Benjamin Lee. I hope and pray all is well with you. Today we have another special guest on the podcast, Dr. Susan Kleiner. Dr. Sue is a titan in sports nutrition. Her seminal research on male and female bodybuilders launched the study of the nutritional needs of muscle building, power, and strength. She is the owner of the internationally recognized consulting firm High Performance Nutrition. Dr. Sue is a world-renowned expert and scientist in the sports nutrition product industry and the author of 7 books, including her bestseller, The New Power Eating. Dr. Sue has consulted with pro athletes and teams, Olympians and elite athletes in countless sports. She is co-founder and fellow of the International Society of Sports Nutrition and a fellow of the American College of Nutrition, a member of the American College of Sports Medicine, and the National Strength and Conditioning Association. As an athletic woman herself, Dr. Sue knows that athletes deserve proven lifestyle guidance and products to conquer their dreams. This was a real treat for me to be able to talk to Dr. Kleiner, and I really appreciated her time, and I am confident that you will be able to take a great deal out of this conversation that we had. So I hope you enjoy the show. Here we go. Dr. Sue, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Well, I really appreciate your time. I know you have a lot going on, and thank you so much for being here. I reached out to you a couple of months ago, and I didn't think initially we'd be talking like this, but I'm happy you accepted my invitation. And your book, Power Eating, has had a big impact on me, and I know we're going to talk a lot about that, I'm sure. I want to begin actually with some of the volunteer work that you do. I know on your website you talk a lot about your passion for what you're doing in Vietnam, and I wanted to see if you could just kind of give us some details about that and how all that got started.
Well, it's funny. First of all, if any of my Vietnamese family sees this, my heart is with you in Vietnam.
Yeah.
They are, by the way, doing one of the best jobs of all countries in the whole world of controlling this pandemic.
Wow.
Within their borders. So how this got started, my husband, as I had mentioned to you before we started rolling here, is a periodontist, and he's quite involved in the academic program at the University of Washington. He's a clinical periodontist. He has his own practice, but he has volunteered his time always on Wednesdays to teach the graduate program. And so there was this, there's a group here, it's out of the Pacific Northwest called Medical Education Exchange Team, MEET, and they invited him to come and teach at the Kanto University of Medicine and Pharmacy. And when he was talking about going, I said, well, wait a minute. Don't they need someone to teach nutrition? You're not going to Vietnam without me. So off we both went. In fact, they did need someone to teach nutrition, but they didn't even know to ask for it. At that time, this is about 5 or 6 years ago now, there is no profession of dietetics in Vietnam. And so teaching nutrition academically is not something that they have. So when I said, I have a PhD in nutrition and I would love to come and teach medical students, it was a whole new concept to them. And so off I went, and little did I know how connected I would feel so immediately. So I am actually in many ways back to my clinical dietetics roots, trying to help medical students. And so this is not like what we call jungle medicine, where you go in, you treat 50 people and you leave, and next year you come back and you treat another 50 people with the same stuff and you leave. You're not changing the medical infrastructure, but we are teaching faculty and students at the medical school to change the curriculum, to incorporate, regardless of what specialty it is, into practice that actually changes what's happening out in the community. And so this is now guiding medical students how to incorporate nutrition into their practices, whether it's diabetic patients, hypertensive patients, surgical patients in the hospital, and shockingly enough, the metabolic syndrome is exploding in Vietnam, as we have watched it happen in China. It is moving across Asia as their economies are opened, similar to China, and they become more capitalist, even though they are a communist country, and their economy is a more capitalist style. And the first businesses that come in is American fast food. And that becomes the place you want to be and be seen, right? And so young people are changing their diets from one of the healthiest cuisines in the world to what we've done here to ourselves. And there's a dramatic shift in the health and well-being of the people of Vietnam. I feel some personal responsibility as an American, because it is our influence that is being exported around the world. And I understand nutrition and what we can call lifestyle medicine. And so, and I was a child of the Vietnam era, the Vietnam War era, which they call the American War, which everyone should be aware of, just for perspective. Absolutely. And so all of that sense of connectedness has made it an incredible opportunity to go and share and learn and get to know a people who are incredibly gracious, ingenious. No surprise that we couldn't win that one, and forgiving, tremendously forgiving. So it's one of the great things, and I miss it terribly right now.
Yeah. And I appreciate you sharing that. When you did have the last opportunity to go over there, how long is that teaching? Is it for a week? Is it for a month? What does that look like?
So our sort of window of leaving the U.S. and returning based on only our volunteer, and this is 100% volunteer. We pay our own way. We pay our own expenses. And it is the most well-funded experience, paid back in spades. But so it's 10 days really door to door, but, and the teaching time is 1 week that is packed, early morning to late evening, with the students and then, and the faculty. And then, my husband and I have fortunate to be able to add on another 5 days, and we choose one place to go. And so we don't we believe we will return to Vietnam year after year after year. And so we choose one place and see it as well as we can for about 5 days, and then we come home.
Very nice. Well, you mentioned a little bit about their cuisine, and I talked to you about going to Africa in 2014. And I had the opportunity to go to Israel in 2018. So it's always interesting going to different places and really experiencing the culture and the food, which I really love, and what this podcast is a lot about. What makes their diet there? You talked about how these fast food restaurants are unfortunately having a negative impact. What's so good about their diet there? I'm not really too familiar with it.
So the Vietnamese diet is absolutely fresh, local ingredients, very plant rich. Okay. It is not necessarily vegetarian, but it is very plant rich. And as I said, often picked from the fields that morning or the evening before. They have a very, very busy food transportation system. And as I said, it's local. So they are bringing things in, even in one family. where part of the family may be the street food vendor or the restaurant in the urban setting in the city. They may have a plot, a farming square or two outside the city where other parts of the family live. They're very connected. It may be, extended family by aunts and uncles, or it may be children who are grown, and people are living in two different places, taking care of their role in the business of farming and serving, and then bringing in. And so, or if they don't have their own places to grow, they are going to the market at 3:00 in the morning and getting fresh produce for their production that day. And for people in their own homes, the same. As they're making their own food, they are going to the markets just about every day, sometimes twice a day. Yeah. And markets are that local that you walk to the market. You don't have to take a bus. Yeah. You can get to your local market. Everything looks like an enormous farmer's market, and even the small little roadside markets are abundant, and they know timing. They know, for instance, street food has become a passion. And I have to say, we have learned how to eat well and never get sick so far. And you talk to people and you learn. And so there are certain vendors that you only see early in the morning, or there are vendors that street food that you will only see in the evening. And that's because they have no refrigeration. Mm-hmm. And so they make enough for the customer base that they know they're going to have for the hours that they're open, maybe from 6 in the morning until 10. And that's an early morning sort of breakfast soup usually. And you won't find them at noon. It's too warm. It's gotten too hot. They can't keep their food fresh. And so they're gone by 10. And then someone else will open, say from, 11 to 1 or 2. And now it's getting too hot again. And they make just enough. And then they close down. And then there is night market or evening. So it's more evening food, but these places are not open all day long like we think of. And because of the way they operate, they have to start preparing for tomorrow the minute they close. And so it takes them, whether they're chopping or whatever they're doing, now they go shopping for the next day. That's the cycle, right? You can't just be open all day and be ready to open tomorrow morning. It's not a fast food stand where you've got a whole production line of people and stuff in the freezer.
That is so
I think that's the key.
Yeah, what stood out to me there, what you just said, time, just the amount of time. Then you compare that to here in America and fast food. And to me, that just sounds like there's the difference, right? Where you have this freshness, you have this preparation, and that's just, that's pretty fascinating to hear. Just how much time goes into it. And it's interesting, too, how the quarantine has forced more people to, I think, appreciate that more, where you have more time, to actually cook instead of being so busy where we rush out and get more food.
I agree. And the interest in food is there because they're preparing it in all generations. My young medical students or nursing students that I'm teaching, and so they start, so medical school is 6 years, and that is their undergraduate and medical degree put together. They have sort of 3 years of basic sciences and English, and then they have 3 years of their clinical medical side. And so they start medical school at 18. So they're very young, right? Yet if I ask them what the ingredients are for a dish, they know. Yeah. Their food is so much a part of their culture. It would be as if, and today I don't even know. I mean, I don't know what young people know anymore, but for me, when I was young, if a young person didn't know the Pledge of Allegiance, it would be like Our immigrants knew it was the first thing they learned is the Pledge of Allegiance, right? I mean, everyone knows the Pledge of Allegiance. Well, in Vietnam, everyone knows what's in their food, what the ingredients are. They can describe the things that I'm saying, what is this? I've never seen this before. So that deep cultural connection to their cuisine is part of their personal identity. And they are going to lose that. The loss is so deep and so wide if they lose their connection to their own food. And I would say the same has happened here. We see the illness in society as we've become more and more disconnected from our food, our cultural values, our how food affects us physically and mentally, the feeding of a family, what that does, and the impact of not having a family meal has an impact on the behavior of children. I mean, it is enormous, and I am watching it in real time in Vietnam, and it is, and I am doing my best to try and raise the volume on calling for it to slow down.
Good. Yeah. I certainly appreciate that. And let me ask you a question about children with food. How do we make that connection, or how do we help our children? I have a 9-year-old. I know you have children as well. So how do we get them, I don't know what the word is or term, passionate, interested, where they take really great value and consideration into what they're eating?
So my girls are fortunately grown women at 28 and 23 right now, but my connection that I taught them was to never lose, because we're born with it, your ability to recognize how food makes you feel. We have to teach children to disconnect from what they're doing and how it makes them feel. Humans, like all animals, are instinctual in knowing that certain things are dangerous. Certain things make us feel bad. We want to stay away from them. Certain things make us feel good. Certainly, we have things as humans available that make us good, that are feel good for a brief period of time, but can be damaging to us. But in the big picture, we are somewhat instinctually connected to what we do, what we put in, who we surround ourselves with, all of that. And society teaches us to disconnect from that. Right? You're too tired, take a pill. Mm-hmm. You're not feeling good. Just work harder, right? Whatever it is, ignore it and keep going. And so, you're, as I said, you're unhappy with your spouse, put your head down and ignore it. Whatever it is, don't pay attention. And so in my house, it was the opposite. It was pay attention. Yeah. Listen to your body. Listen to what's happening. Understand, and in this case, understand how food makes you feel. And pay attention even over days of time. While a donut may make you feel really good, really fast. Yeah. If there's a box of them and you eat that whole box over a day or two, you're going to know you feel like crap. Yeah. Remember what it was that you did that made you feel like that. And the reason you feel bad is because a little bit of sugar in a short period of time increases our ability to have the amino acid tryptophan cross the blood-brain barrier. And tryptophan is an amino acid that is a building block for serotonin, the neurotransmitter in our brain that makes us feel good, makes us stay happy. raises our mood state, keeps us alert during the day. But when you eat a lot of sugar consistently over a period of time, your blood sugar starts to rise and fall and rise and fall, and that becomes a stress on your body. Your body does not like peaks and valleys in your blood sugar, and your body recognizes that as incoming stress and internal stress. Stress hormones are produced. You start to break down the proteins in your body because those stress hormones are telling your body, you've got a tiger on your tail. Get moving. And so if you need to get moving fast, just like if you need to get out of the blocks in a race really fast, everything gets pushed into your bloodstream so it's available. And that actually decreases over time your ability to keep your serotonin levels elevated. And those start to do this too. And so and there's a whole host of other things that go on. Yeah. In the midst of that, you start to feel bad very shortly. Over a long haul, other physiological things happen. But within a week or two, this will happen. And that's what we called years ago sugar blues. The needing to keep eating more and more sugar to feel better.
Feel normal, yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that kind of sounds like the book that you wrote, The Good Mood Diet, and just the impact of foods and just understanding how, these subtle changes can make a big difference. What you just said was interesting too, in a week or two. I mean, it doesn't have to be that long. But then on the other hand, if you decide to shift and to change how you're eating, you can begin to have these immediate effects as well, correct?
Absolutely. And, I have had clients, I've, had the great fortune in my career to work with some very optimistic, very highly motivated people.
Yeah.
Yet, as you said, these tiny changes, and when I would work with them, often you keep as much the same as you possibly can. And this is kind of a lesson for everyone. Yeah. Even for a dietitian who's got the chops that I have, mm-hmm. The best way to help people stick to changes is to keep as much the same as possible that they're doing. Don't change your whole diet. You're never going to do that. It's way too hard. Yeah. The things that are within the boundaries of, these are good things, don't switch those around. Keep those the same and tweak the things kind of around the edges. Well, with these clients, very often, there might be a handful of tweaks that help support what I call the neurobiology of food. How we use food in combinations to help elevate our mental energy, our mood, or our ability to cope with stress, to rest and relax and sleep, whatever those, cope with anxiety, those things, we can do small things with food that if they've not been there all along, they actually become quite noticeable. And I love it when I get the call that says in a week, "Oh my God, Doc, I have never felt so good in my life. What did you do to my diet?" And that is a better call. That's a call that's going to stick versus, "Oh, everybody, I've lost weight. Everyone, I'm looking this way." Those are external things.
Yeah.
My goal is understanding it's all about how you feel. It's not about what you weigh. If you feel good, if you stick with your plan, and you will, because you recognize even when you went off of it, you go back to it because you felt so good. Mm-hmm. If you need to lose weight, you will.
Yeah. And that is so good too, because I kind of have a mindset of little by little and I want to ask you really two questions here. One, how do you help the person where you're telling them, okay, look, we're just going to make some subtle changes here, but they're so excited, they're so fired up and said, no, we're just going to do everything all at once. And that in about a couple of weeks or a month, they're just going to crash and burn. And then you mentioned already, but feel free to elaborate. One of the things I try to tell people with the scale is that, and I've done talks before, life beyond the scale or beyond the scale. We get I had 2 scales a few years ago. My wife never got on any of them. it was only me, where I was just kind of infatuated with the number, like making sure that this number, and thankfully I was able to figure out with some help from other people as well, there's so many other ways to measure success. So how do you help the person who is just so anxious and they just want to get everything done fast? And then how do you help that person who has that, I call it, a friend of mine said that she was a scaleaholic. And I actually like that. It's funny, but it's true, because people will weigh 3 or 4 times a day. How do you help those people?
Well, so the first thing is I ask them, why?
Yeah.
Why do you do that? What is that giving you?
Yeah.
What do you think that's telling you? There is a technique called motivational interviewing. I don't know if you or your listeners are familiar with it, but it is a critically important style of working with anybody. It could be an employee that you manage. It can be a client that you're working with. It can be your children, your spouse, or partner, your parents, that managing up concept, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Motivational interviewing is guiding the person to their own, to understanding what is happening with them, having them tell you why they're there, and they participate. In fact, they are the initiator of the solutions. So figuring out what is the problem, it's not always what you think it may be, right? I get people who come to me. It seems obvious, right? They're coming for their diet. That's why else would you come to a dietitian?
Yeah.
But why are you really here? If you've told me you've gone on and off diets forever, well, then you know how to find a diet and go on it. You don't need me for that. Why are you here? Why are you here? Too. Why are you here with me instead of choosing another book or online program? Why are you really here? What are your real obstacles? I hear you saying X. What happens when, all of that? And then what do you want to accomplish? What are your goals? Your goals are not my goals. They need to be your goals.
Yeah.
And then how do we begin? And what steps are possible? We don't need to be at the end goal. We need to figure out what you can do, what you feel like you can do tomorrow.
Yeah.
And so actually I have this book right here.
Okay.
It's quite good. There's other ones.
Nice.
This one is nutrition and fitness. And it's a real step-by-step and role playing. And you really need to role play this because it's a technique that today is taught in behavioral therapy, but certainly isn't taught to personal trainers.
Yeah.
Unless you've done quite a bit of additional continuing education. So that's the first step. Why are you here?
Book for our
so
listeners?
it's Motivational Interviewing in Nutrition and Fitness by Dawn Clifford and Laura Curtis.
That's perfect.
Yeah, that should be it. Published by the Guilford Press, and it was published in copyright is 2016.
So helping people to understand motivate with the motivational interview and helping them really to get to that point where they can have that self-awareness of understanding themselves even better, where you're guiding them so they can, it's like the aha moment, like, oh, okay, that makes sense, where the diet or the, figuring out a meal plan is not always that issue because there's so much information out there anyway, but sometimes there can be some underlying things that they need to process or work through.
Right. For instance, I have worked with airplane pilots, right, who fly all night, over the Pacific. And so they say to me, well, I'm not home sitting at my kitchen table to eat the 3 squares and the 2 snacks that all these diets say that I need to eat. So I'm dead in the water, Oh, that's a bad thing to say for going on. But anyway, I'm never going to be able to follow a diet.
Mm-hmm.
And so the conversation is, well, tell me about your day.
Yeah.
When do you eat? What, and what are the obstacles? What are the options? Can I've seen guys coming on with a cooler, but, I don't want to do that because it takes up space or whatever. Well, so, okay. Why does that cooler make you feel that way? Why does, just starting to find out and realize that just because you can't sit at your kitchen table every day, except for during pandemic times, none of us do.
Yeah.
How can we still eat well? How can we figure out what our options are? And when are we hungry? And when do we need to eat? And what is the right amount of fuel for a person who's sitting in an airplane for 12 hours? All of those hydration things, all those things. I worked with a person who was, so I'm in Seattle, and we're a port. And in those great big, huge unloaders at the port, at least at this time, I don't know if it's true today, when they would go up in the cabin of that great big unloader way up high, there's no bathroom up there, and they're not allowed to come down for 4 hours. It was something like that, 4 or 8 hours. Once they're up there, they're union, they're on a clock, the management, you don't come down because it stops the whole system for you to come down to go to the bathroom. So you need to be dehydrated up there unless you can figure out other options. Well, I was working with a woman, which was a rare person at that time anyway. She says the dudes can, they can pee into a Coke bottle, but I can't, or their big gulp, they drink it, then they pee in it.
Mm-hmm.
I can't do that. Well, so we found solutions for her, but until you really let people talk to you, why are you dehydrating yourself? And you just say, well, you can't do that. You need to drink this much, X times whatever. And this is what you need. That's not, they go away and it's like, well, I can't do that.
Yeah.
And so this is absolutely essential. And they're coming up with the solution versus what we know doesn't work, which is handing somebody a piece of paper, which is essentially what we have been doing. Maybe we're being a little fancier about it. Maybe we're doing online programming. You're not doing anything different than the old-fashioned hand someone a diet and send them out the door.
Yeah.
That's all you're doing. It is not a solution for a long period of time. And my goal is to have my patients never see me again, frankly.
Yeah.
Right? I want them to be a success. So starting with motivational interviewing, back to the scale. So asking, as I said, why do you do that? And then having a little bit of stories, personal experience, whatever. The first thing to say is, that all the number on a scale represents is your body's relationship to gravity.
Yeah.
That's all that number represents. It doesn't say anything about what's going on inside your body.
Yeah.
And so my personal experience, I don't know how everybody else has been doing, but my personal experience over this pandemic is that I was really good with my exercise for about 4 weeks. And I go to group exercise. I have a running group that I do all kinds of stuff. I am a social exerciser.
Yeah.
I love going to the gym and lifting and talking to everybody and having people ask me questions, and we're, shucking and jiving. We're having a good time. Right. and all of that just ended.
Yeah.
And so I did my stuff at home. I have my bicycle on a trainer at home. I have some weights, and that lasted about 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And then that kind of ended. And so I have to say, I when about probably 16 weeks in, I hadn't gained or lost any weight on the scale.
Yeah.
But I can tell you, my body doesn't look anything the same. I lost probably 4 pounds of muscle and put on 4 pounds of fat.
Yeah.
And so what does the scale tell me? Oh, you're doing great.
Yep.
You haven't gained an ounce. You're perfect.
Yeah.
But I'm not. And so it's a false sense of security in that situation. In other situations, data show that people who are trying to control their body weight, there is a certain amount of getting on a scale for the right person that helps them.
Yeah.
And it keeps them in reality rather than waiting until they've gained 10 pounds and nothing fits them anymore. And they go, oh man, I must be eating too much. And so there's, again, it's understanding the person that you're talking to, being aware of the techniques out there to talk to people. Nothing is an absolute. We are talking with individuals. So maybe 2 scales is a little over the top.
No, it was way too much. And, I threw them away, and I ended up doing really well. Thankfully, I had some coaching, and I was actually getting coaching from Bill Phillips, who wrote the book. Life. And I got to go to his camp the following year. So I did a talk there called Beyond the Scale. And it was freeing to some degree because I was just so infatuated with it. And so I started measuring more by my clothes and started measuring my wins and successes. Like, okay, did I work out? Yes, I worked out. Did I hit 100 ounces of water? Yes, I did that. Did I take my supplements? So it just kind of got ingrained in me now where I know I picked up some weight too, I think, in the quarantine. But I started, I had this, I called it my fat suit. It was this brown suit. I had it for years. I can't remember when I bought it, and I left it in Illinois. That's where I'm from. And years ago, I was just gaining weight. I said, okay, I gotta go get the brown suit. And I couldn't fit into the brown suit. So the brown suit was supposed to be like the fat suit, and I couldn't fit into that. So I was like, oh no. So that year I started in August with him. And then like by October, I was back into it and felt really good, a lot of muscle and lost a good amount of fat. And one of the guys I was preaching with, he had mentioned, he said, Ben's been wearing this brown suit quite a bit. Let's see if he will be in it after Thanksgiving, because it was November. So I had the last word. So I got up and I said, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to wear this every Wednesday and Sunday when I'm here at the building, like for the rest of the year. So it came like this whole ordeal type thing. And I still have the brown suit, and I got a special day coming up next week. So I think I'm going to wear it this weekend. So that's kind of been some things for me. Can I still fit into certain things? I'm focusing on as well, waist size. I read an article, I can't remember the name of it, but looking at how your waist size can actually be a predictor, for good health, and for men being 35 inches or smaller. So that's another way that you can measure certain things. So, but what you mentioned too hit me too, because I think sometimes I still may not always want to face reality, when it comes to like where I may be, because I'm just not getting on the scale that much. But I can tell, okay, I need to cut back, or I need to switch it up a bit.
But just to be careful, though, because if you're doing a lot of weightlifting and you're eating properly and you're well hydrated, so your weight will be higher. Yeah. And this is what I'm saying. But it's not a relationship to anything other than gravity. It's not telling you you've actually lost fat and you've gained muscle. You are way healthier. You are fully fueled and fully hydrated. All of that weighs something.
Yeah.
And it's good stuff. In fact, when my clients come, even those who want to get lean, sculpt their bodies, I say in your first 2 weeks, don't get on the scale. Yeah. And in fact, if you do, don't freak out, because if you're doing everything I'm telling you to do and that we've discussed and you've agreed to that can work for you, you will weigh more. And that is the fallacy of letting the scale lead you, rather than, as you said, checking the box, the pat on the back. I did the behavior. I did the thing that I know that's good for me, that makes me feel good.
Yeah.
Stick with those things. The scale is a secondary tool.
Yeah. Yeah. Very good. Thank you for that. I want to go back real quickly here, and I got a lot of questions. We may not be able to get to them, but I want to go back to 1991, and you correct me if I'm wrong. I think that's when you were with the Browns, and you had the opportunity to work with Bill Belichick. And were you the first to have that position as a sports nutritionist? And how did that come about? Did he create it? Did you create it? Walk us through that. I found that very interesting when I learned that about you. So I'm just curious to learn more.
So Bill Belichick's first head coaching job was at the Cleveland Browns.
Mm-hmm.
And he had worked in New England with one of the original sports nutritionists. She was very part-time. She was a contracting nutritionist with the team. Mm-hmm. And he learned a lot from her. She then, stayed where she was. He came to Cleveland, and and he's you can say what you want about Bill Belichick, and there's probably a lot to say. Brilliant.
Yeah.
And his attention to detail, I think, has no end.
Yeah.
And part of his contract with the Browns was that he have a sports nutritionist to work with. Mm. And so he came to the Browns, and this was the original Cleveland Browns, mind you. This is before they left in the middle of the night, and I tailed it out of there and went to, where did they go first? Baltimore.
I think it was Baltimore, yeah.
Yeah. So I had come back to Cleveland. My doctoral research my degree was from Case Western Reserve University, but the work was done in sports medicine at the Cleveland Clinic. And the Cleveland Clinic had the sports medicine contract with the Cleveland Browns. And so when the Browns asked the docs, I had come back to Cleveland. I had been gone. I had been on faculty at Duke University. I was back in Cleveland. Kind of, my husband and I were leapfrogging each other in our academic pursuits. And so we were back in Cleveland, and the clinic said, the only person for you to work with is Dr. Susan Kleiner. And so I got the call, and I thought it was what we called in those days a phony phone call, right? I was like, because all my friends knew I didn't want to come back to Cleveland.
Yeah.
And there was no academic position. I didn't know what I was going to do. And it was the right thing for my husband at that time. And so we came back to Cleveland, and I get this. It's the old-fashioned voice recorder, with a message that this is the strength and conditioning coach from the Browns, and we'd like you to call. And I'm thinking, yeah, who is this? And I call back going, who is this? And of course it was the real deal. Well, anyway, that opportunity was a full-time, full-blown nutrition program with the Cleveland Browns, and it was the first. There had never been a full-blown full-time nutrition program in the NFL, and so that was the opportunity. And I worked very closely with Coach Belichick and his guidance. Sometimes we butted heads. Sometimes the outcome that he directed blew up. Sometimes mine didn't work so well because we were creating something brand new that never existed before. And these were really the early days of sports nutrition on a professional team scale in anything. There wasn't anything. What was changing was drug use in sports. So now we had a drug testing program, which we had never had before. And that's what allowed for the rise of sports nutrition. I had written an article on nutritional alternatives to anabolic steroids because diet and anabolic steroids in competitive male bodybuilders was my doctoral research. And so it kind of thrust me into this world that I was fascinated with: strength and power, diet and muscle building. And so it just positioned me perfectly for this role. And it was an awesome learning experience.
Yeah. That's really cool. That's fascinating. Thank you for sharing that. I know you've been able to work with so many different athletes, and there was a quote in your book here, and the new power eating, and I think I misquoted it at the beginning. I just said power eating, but this is the updated edition, the new power eating.
The clever new title, the new power eating.
Pat Riley, on one of the pages you had talked about when you worked with him, he said that 50% of athletic performance is a result of mental focus. And it just seems like, if we can get the food element down, there's so much focus is a part of that, right? Just with staying on the right track, staying on course. And I know you've touched on that. Do you have any other tips or strategies when it comes to just staying focused with what we're consuming and staying on the right track?
I think it's you had touched on it as well. The wins should be small steps.
Okay.
Keep your eye on the ball. Don't get distracted. And the ball goes a long way, but we know that in order to hit the ball, let's say baseball or golf or tennis, soccer, you've got to maintain your focus, not just to kick it, but the entire follow through of the swing, whatever it is, for it to keep going in the direction that you want it to go, right? If you don't follow through on when you impact with the ball, it will not go in the direction that you want it to go. And that's how I think about feeding yourself. Okay. That you make a decision, I want to do this, but the follow through moment to moment, staying centered and focused on where you want that ball to go is critically important. You may be sitting around feeling really bummed right now. You can't go anywhere. You can't do anything. You're very restricted, and the choices that you have are to blow up your diet, right? I just don't care. There's a bag of chips in the pantry, and I'm just going to open the whole bag and sit in front of the tube and eat it.
Yeah.
Stop for a second.
Yeah.
Where is your follow through? And in fact, you can probably eat some chips. Just please put them in a bowl. Close up the bag, put a rubber band around it, put someone else's name on it if you have to. But know that I can enjoy. I'm craving the salt. I'm craving the crisp. I'm missing that. Go for it. You know that you can have a small bowl. That may be all you need, or ice cream, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Portion it out so that you not only impact with the ball, but you follow through. And so that doesn't mean deprivation and restriction. It means just sticking with a plan. And so number one, you have a plan.
Yeah.
And then remembering it and loving yourself enough that you have empathy for your own need. I just really want something that isn't keeping me inside this box that I'm stuck in right now.
Yeah.
If getting out of that box is having some chips or ice cream, then and that's your only choice right now, then go ahead. But understand that you can stay on your path and have follow through if you have what we call a portion.
Yeah.
And that means have your bowl. Get some really pretty bowl. Make a bowl. Do something that makes this moment feel special to you.
Yeah.
That you are nurturing yourself and that you are deserving. And you're not only deserving of this moment of luxury, but you are deserving of the end point. You are deserving of that time in the future because it will come. Yeah. But it doesn't come without work. You don't become Megan Rapinoe by sitting in front of the tube when someone said to you, you're not cut out for soccer. Yeah. And that story of all those young women on that team is so important to listen to. Half of them, as young girls, were denied a spot on the team because they were told they would never be very good at soccer. And instead of going home and eating a bag of chips, they went home and they put in 10,000 hours of practice to show everybody that they could do it. Yeah. Finding that maybe none of us are going to be elite, but we can be elite in the world, but we can be elite for ourselves.
Yeah. No, I love that. Thank you so much. That is so good. And that's kind of the basis of this podcast too. I can do. And because I have a defibrillator, I have an enlarged heart, I got a genetic condition. And so every day, and no matter what obstacles we find, and I like Ryan Holiday's book, The Obstacle is the Way, we get to decide, it's a great book. It's so encouraging, but we get to decide how are we going to respond to these difficult moments. So, and that can make all the difference because it can be easy just to turn to food. And I can't remember who said it, but food is like your best friend. Food's always there for us. Food won't talk back. It gives us comfort for a short amount of time, but it also can bring a lot of pain attached to it as well. So that's great thoughts. I know we only have a few more minutes. I wanted to ask you just a few more questions if I can, and we could go pretty fast with this.
Okay.
We could call it rapid fire.
Okay.
Because your book, I want to encourage everybody, you have to buy this book, The New Power Eating, More Muscle, More Energy, Less Fat. Everything is in this book. So some of the questions, it's already in the book. So to get even more details, question number 1, apple cider vinegar. There's so much stuff out there. Is there any good to it at all? Should we use it? Does it help lower glucose levels, acid reflux? What are your thoughts?
No.
That's perfect. That's all I need to hear.
There are, I guess what I want to expand just a tiny bit is there are so many things that do a whole lot for those issues that some very narrow, maybe, who knows, maybe it worked for a few people. A bunch of people selling it to you is not necessarily meaningful because it's passed down virally, doesn't mean that it works. And so follow the recommendations that we know have profound differences.
Perfect. Yeah. Egg yolks. Should we consume them or?
Yes. So the poor egg yolk, choline, a major B vitamin, half the most abundant neurotransmitter in the body. Acetylcholine is found in most abundance of all foods in our diet in an egg yolk. Most of us are not big tofu eaters. That's the other place where you would find it. Soy lecithin. You can supplement with it, but there's a lot of really good stuff in egg yolks, and there has never been a study that showed an egg yolk a day raised cholesterol levels. In fact, the studies are now, in a healthy person, 1 to 3 egg yolks a day don't seem to do much of anything. It also, of course, depends on the rest of your diet, but an egg yolk a day can make a big difference. It is very healthy. Don't start throwing the whites down the drain. Eat the whole egg.
Eat the whole egg. All right, very good. What about coenzyme Q10?
So coenzyme Q10 is very interesting. There is some marvelous research on patients with heart disease, including it as it assists with energy metabolism within the cell. And in patients with heart disease, it is being used as part of a cocktail of supplementation and pharmaceutical support very effectively. That does not mean that in a person who does not have heart disease, it's going to do the same thing or make you super well. Yeah. We like people to get as much of their nutrition from food as possible. And so consuming foods that are abundant in coenzyme Q10 is a good start, but the supplementation, we're seeing some maybe positive results in athletes. It's got the results aren't clear yet. And so it's not something that I recommend across the board, although there are times when we try it and some people may notice a difference, but there's nothing that I can say to you 100% use coenzyme Q10 unless it's from your cardiologist.
Gotcha. Now I can answer the next question, but I want to hear from you. And there's a lot in your book, vitamin D.
Oh, yes. So this is one where a whole lot of the medical world got it right for a while and have gone in the wrong direction. Yes, vitamin D is a hormone. It is actually not a vitamin. It was misnamed before we completely understood its function in the body. Our levels should be, my goal is a minimum of 50 units. In the way that we measure in the bloodstream. Vitamin D can be lower if we only look at it as a vitamin. Now, 50 units in your serum test, your vitamin D serum test. Okay. Intakes can be lower and serum levels can be lower if we're only looking at bone health. But the minute and it is absolutely critical for bone health. If we start to look wider and broader at multiple diseases, then it's clear that we need more vitamin D and our levels need to be higher. So our most abundant source is sunshine. And we know that you can do 10 to 15 minutes of exposure of sort of arms, chest, face, and legs daily, and you get an abundant dose of vitamin D. If you are living any further north than Atlanta, that only works May to September. And then the sun is at the wrong angle for our bodies for our skin to absorb the UV rays at the angle required to manufacture vitamin D in our skin. So then you need to supplement, and typical supplementation ideally is based on knowing blood levels and having a vitamin D test, but fairly safe is 1,000 to 2,000 international units or 25 to 50 milligrams a day. Those are equivalent, and that is a fairly safe supplementation. Some people will need far more. It also depends on your diet. Dairy, fortified milk and fortified foods, egg yolk, fatty fish like salmon, those are all good sources, but we do not absorb vitamin D that well from our gut. We are built to make it in our skin. And so, but we can't have an abundance of skin exposure because we get skin cancer. So, we're living in places with skin tones that don't protect us. Yeah. In fact, people of color are at higher risk because you are protected from overexposure to the sun. And so you don't make vitamin D in the same capacity as a Caucasian, but we also have no protection. You have some protection, but certainly not complete protection from overexposure and burning and cancer. So wearing sun protection is very important, but if you have sunscreen on, you can't make vitamin D. So it's this brief 15-minute exposure that seems to be safe on all levels.
Yeah, very good. Thank you so much for that. We started with Vietnam, and I think that'd be a great place to end. Tell us how can people in general help? Is there a way to donate? How can others assist? What's going on?
Oh my, that would be amazing. Well, so first of all, probably easiest is you can read about it at its meet. I think it's meet. The website is meet-international.org. Okay. You can contact me either through my website, which is drskleiner.com, drskleiner.com, or email me, Susan at drskleiner.com. And that would be the way it would be through me. I'm the nutrition team leader. And if you want to sort of line item the donation to the nutrition team, we can kind of do that together. But you wouldn't be sending me the money. And it is a 401c3 or something, whatever those are. Yeah. It is a tax deduction. It is considered a donation. And so, oh my goodness. Or it doesn't have to come to the nutrition team. There's multiple areas. You can learn about it by going onto the website. Okay. And that would just be unbelievable, because every single one of us pays our own way. And does this on our own. There are a few physicians from the University of Washington who are funded through grant funding for travel, but most of us are paying our own way. And we could do so much there to create research, which would, for the Vietnamese folks there, we wouldn't be doing it. We would be helping to guide them for what they need. They tell us what they need. We don't tell them.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. I could talk to you for about 4 hours. I know we'll have 4 hours, but thank you so much, Dr. Sue, for being with us today, and hope everything goes well with you and the family.
Oh, and my prayers and wishes to everyone out there. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you again for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed the conversation with Dr. Kleiner. I certainly had a great time being able to talk to her and to learn so much from her as well. Be sure to pick up her book, The New Power Eating. I know that will be a great resource for you for many years to come. Be sure to also check out my website, benjaminlee.blog, where you can find all of my podcasts and, of course, blogs and books. I hope and pray that all is well with you. Take care, and God bless. And remember, I can do, and so can you.